Hello class, my name is Grace Bondurant and I will be presenting the book called Developing the Leader Within You by John C. Maxwell. John C. Maxwell is a Christian author and he's also a pastor. He's written many books that have sold over 1 million copies. He was actually voted the #1 leadership and management expert, and lots of his books are on the New York Times bestsellers list. This book basically is a step-by-step guide how to become a better leader in yourself. It gives a true definition of leadership. It gives you the keys of leadership. It even gives you little tests after each chapter to determine where you're at in your leadership potential. And I chose to read this book because honestly, leadership is something I've struggled with. I thought that leadership was something you were born with, and involved a lot of speaking up front and making decisions, and I'm not really comfortable with that, and so I wanted to get better, and I just thought this book would be a good option for me. I'm now going to briefly summarize each chapter and talk about how it relates to leadership. So in chapter 1, the main focus is about influence. In this chapter, they talk about the 5 different levels of what leadership level you're at. The first level is position, then permission, production, people development, and personhood. And basically, these are just kind of steps to a ladder. And #1, position is the lowest level. As you move up, you'll be able to develop people as well as also developing yourself. And in this chapter, it defines leadership as really just your sphere of influence, who you're able to make an impact on. So that's what true leadership is. Chapter 2 talks about priorities, how to manage them, how to organize them. So for example, I'm going to read it straight from the book. On page 20, it talks about the Pareto principle. The Pareto principle is basically how to get the most success out of your priorities. So it says 20% of your priorities will give you 80% of your production if you spend your time, energy, money, and personnel on the top 20% of your priorities. Well, this is important because everyone has a lot of priorities, a lot of things taking their attention, but if you invest in the top 20% of those priorities, you'll get 80% of your results. That's what the Pareto principle is. And then talks about the difference between being efficient and effective, and it defines it as efficiency is doing things right, while effectiveness is doing the right things. And those things will help you to better prioritize. Chapter 3 is all about integrity, and I really like how the book differentiates between integrity and image. Image is what you project to people as who you are, versus integrity is actually who you are when nobody is looking. And integrity is a very important aspect of a leader, because someone without integrity, nobody's going to want to follow them. And then talks about rights versus responsibilities, and as you move up on the leadership rungs, you're going to have more responsibilities and less rights, and that's something a leader has to learn to accept. Chapter 4 is about creating positive change, and how a lot of leaders, they go into a position wanting to change the world or change the company, but really what you have to do is change yourself first, because if you don't change yourself first, no one's going to want to follow you if you don't have the leadership qualities. And then it goes on to describe how a lot of people resist change, and the book gives a bunch of reasons. I'll read some to you. One is that the routine is disrupted, or it creates fear of the unknown. Some other reasons are that people have fear of failure, or people are just satisfied with the way things are. And so with those resisting trends, there are also some benefits, which promotes growth, helps with problem solving, or creates new and better ideas. So this chapter is about how to really relate to people on a level so they'll be more open to change. Chapter 5 is all about problem solving, and the book starts out opening the chapter with 4 main reasons why people have problems or they don't perform the way they should. #1 is they do not know what they're supposed to do. #2, they don't know how to do it. #3, they don't know why they should do it. Or #4, there are obstacles beyond their control. And the first 3 are actually leadership problems. Leaders should be able to inform their employees what they're supposed to do, how to do it, and why. And then knowing that, they give you a bunch of different steps, as listed on the PowerPoint here, of what the problem-solving process is. And there's a bunch of steps here, basically starting with identifying the problem, organizing who can help you solve the problem, collecting data, solutions, and then implementing those. Very similar to what the textbook says, except it has a lot more steps than the textbook supplies. Chapter 6 is about attitude, and this chapter starts off asking you to think of one person who you really admire, and then to say why you admire that person. And the book says that 90% of the time, the the reason why you admire that person has to do with their attitude. Sometimes people mention skill or looks, but attitude is 90% of the reason why someone admires someone. And so as a leader, it's important to reflect on your own personal attitude and how that affects the attitude of your employees and the attitude of your environment. And so if you do notice that you have something wrong with your attitude, it gives you some steps here on how to change that within you. So number one, identify the problem feelings. So if you're feeling angry or discontent or lazy or something like that, and then problem behavior. So if you're consistently late or if you consistently don't complete a task. Moving on to what's the problem thinking that's going on causing that. Identify some right thinking to replace that thinking. Make a commitment to do better, and then you just continue developing plans in order to change yourself first. Chapter 7 is all about people, which the book describes as being its most appreciable asset. Some principles here for people development is, to value them, to be committed to them, have integrity. People won't trust you if you don't have integrity. Make a standard for people to live up to, giving standards, people will kind of just do whatever they want, and just really know what your influence is. And then it gives you some ways to motivate people, to get them to be more excited about their work. Some of the reasons listed in the book on page 123 is to give them a goal and have them participate in that goal. Give them positive dissatisfaction. They're not quite satisfied with how things are, so it gives them a reason to change. Make sure that you give them recognition for their work. People are not going to want to feel motivated if they know they're going to do a job and they're not getting any credit for it. And then give them clear expectations. A lot of times clear expectations or unclear expectations will make people not really sure what to do or how to proceed. And then it gives later on how to deal with people in terms of confrontation, which is a really big issue. It has the 10 commandments of confrontation, which I really appreciate because I'm not super good with confronting people. I'm more, I tend to avoid conflict as much as possible. So it says do it privately, not publicly, do it as soon as possible, talk about only one issue at a time, don't give them all these different things all at once. Don't keep repeating your point over and over again, and deal with only actions that a person can change. Things that can't change, they're not able to do anything about that. So these are things to avoid when you're dealing with conflict.